כשאני חושבת על מוזיאונים, אני חושבת על מוזיאון הטבע של לונדון. הבניין היפהפה עם האוספים המופלאים שמארח למעלה מ5 מיליון מבקרים בשנה, ומעל לחצי מיליון גולשים משתמשים מדי חודש בתכנים הדיגיטליים שלו. בכל זאת, לצד פעילות מחקרית ענפה. אבל מהן מטרותיו של מוזיאון טבע בימינו? האם זה המקום בו אנו מתבוננים בהתפעלות מבעד לזכוכית במוצגים שדרווין הביא עמו ממסעו בביגל? האם מטרתו ללמד? להניע אותנו לפעולה סביבתית? או אולי מטרתו למכור ספלים עם לוגו במחיר מופקע בחנות המוזיאון? כדי לבחון את ההווה והעתיד של מוזיאון הטבע, אני שמחה לארח את קלר מטרסון, מנהלת בכירה למעורבות הציבור במוזיאון הטבע בלונדון. וכדי שנוכל לשוחח, אעבור עכשיו לאנגלית. Shalom and welcome to Claire Matterson, the Director of Engagement for the Natural History Museum in London. Claire, on the byline of the Natural History website, it says, inspiring a love of the natural world. Not knowledge, but love. Why is that?
Well, the simple answer is that, first of all, I think for anybody, you need to love something, to have an emotional connection for something, and then you will care about it, you will have a thirst for knowledge about it. So we have an audience engagement model, actually, and our first underpinning principle is to think about that love and inspiration, and then lead people through then to wanting and having a thirst for knowledge, wanting to then also be empowered to think about how they might act for the natural world today.
And how do you decide on developing a new exhibition? For example, what was the thinking behind the Fantastic Beasts exhibition, which is inspired by the Harry Potter world?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, we think about audience. We've got to think about who are the people that we're trying to reach first. There's no point in just thinking about ourselves, have to think about audience. We really want to think about authenticity and the science and what it is we're trying to say. And then we have our own strategy. We want things to fit with our strategy. And then we have loads of ideas that come to us. And they come to us in lots and lots of different shapes and form. There's not any one way. So Harry Potter, for example, came to us originally with the BBC coming to us and saying, would we be willing and interested in helping make a documentary in the context of Fantastic Beasts? So we looked at this and we thought about it, and we actually said, no, we're very happy to help you make a documentary, but we want to make an exhibition. So because we knew that there was a huge, Harry Potter world out there, we thought there was a fantastic story to think about the magical beasts and the real world, and how you could bring, show that the real world is as magical and fantastic as this fantastical world in our imagination. So audience, idea, story, science, and then strategy for us. We also then end that exhibition sort of saying, this is a magical world, but actually it's a world that's in danger. And we encourage our visitors to think about how to protect the natural world and the things that they can do. And during the run of the exhibition, there'll be the vaquita, which will probably go extinct during this run of this exhibition. So really quite a sort of tough final message. So yeah, all of those things coming into play, but getting to a new audience that perhaps would not otherwise come to the Natural History Museum is important to us.
So following on that, with your involvement, the museum declared a planetary emergency. You see the museum as a place that mobilizes people towards environmental agenda? Is that part of, entertaining people or educating people or mobilizing people?
Well, it's a bit mobilizing and educating, I would say, yeah. So look, we're a natural history museum, and we all know that the natural world is in crisis. Through climate change, through deforestation, through acidification of our oceans. We know it's in crisis, and we felt that we couldn't just be an organization that sort of stood back and sort of monitored and counted what was going on, but also we had to be an organization that would use that past, use that science to actually help inform, but also empower people to think about, well, what should they do? How do people understand their role in the natural world? So we came up with a new mission statement, which is to create advocates for the planet. And we thought about this very carefully. We're not an activist organization. I have great respect for activist organizations, but that's not us. So we chose that word advocate very carefully about somebody who will stand up on behalf of from a sort of a place of knowledge, feeling empowered to make their own decisions about what they want to do to protect the natural world. So it's not a radical departure, but it's a shift for the museum to really use the past to help shape a more positive future.
So you see the museum as a hub of engagement and participation in science. And I'm wondering, how do you involve diverse communities in science-related activities? Because the ones who are already taking their children to the natural history museums, maybe they are advocates of science anyway.
Exactly. I mean, that's such a good question. And it's not easy, of course. You know, what we've been doing, and we've been giving this a lot of thought lately, we've got a big project called the Urban Nature Project, and we were very fortunate to get some funding to do a huge amount of audience research around this project. So we've been actually reaching out, working with local communities who never come to the museum. We've been working and talking with people with disabilities, people from who were deaf, who are partially sighted, and we've been working with them to really understand what are the barriers, what are the obstacles for them to come to the museum, have a connection to nature. And then we've been really developing a sort of theory of change. What is it we need to do to actually make those shifts? So it's a journey we're on. You'll see it a lot through the Gardens project that we've got, and then we're going to bring that into the museum. We've appointed some new posts, people whose job it is to reach out and work with local communities and nationally across the UK. So start of the journey for us, but really the important thing is going out and talking to the audiences and not making assumptions.
So what did you find in maybe just give us a hint. What did you find when talking with these
very
people?
Very interestingly, for the outside spaces, it's really finding what's starting with nature was not the place to start for many of these different groups and communities. Actually, what they were interested in was their own well-being and the well-being of their children and how to do that. So so one of the things is actually talking about well-being, bringing people in through thinking about their own well-being, and then bringing in that context of nature. How do you notice nature? What are the things you have to do to notice, to listen, to watch, and just giving people those sort of basic tools to use themselves and the language to use with their own families. We also had a youth advisory panel made up of very, very energetic and people that never come to the museum before, and they've fed into our own programming, fed into our own interpretation, and we've also given them opportunities, made introductions. So there's a big TV show that is on called Countryfile, and one of the young people is now on Countryfile, and we'll talk about a young Black woman, her experiences of, you know, somehow why sometimes she feels uncomfortable about, you know, going into the countryside, and what the countryside communities can do about that. So yeah, lots and lots of different ways of getting young people's and diverse voices out there into our programming, but also out into the world.
Oh, so I would never thought about that, really, not starting with nature in a, well, natural history museum. So that's really, really brings the point of listening to diverse audiences.
Yeah. I think we just can't make assumptions about, you know, what other people's concerns are, worries are, how they live their life, what matters to them. And if we can, you know, it's really finding it. It's when you make a new friend, isn't it? You find that common ground together. And yeah, so we've it's interesting, during lockdown, in a way, we've done sort of more of this than we ever had done before. You know, we'll then now carry on and meeting people more in person on their own terms.
That sounds like a plan. So Claire Matterson, the Director of Engagement for the Natural History Museum in London, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure.